Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Frank Rausan Pereira. Well, the all-important budget was presented in Parliament by the Finance Minister on Saturday. The budget had something in it for everyone. In the agriculture sector, strategic initiatives such as the Prime Minister Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana aim to bolster agricultural output by improving productivity, diversifying crops and developing robust post-harvest infrastructure. Additionally, the focus on making India self-sufficient in pulses through mission for Aatmanirbharta in pulses and enhancing seed quality with the National Mission on High-Yielding Seeds aims to ensure sustainable farming practices. Agriculture has been placed as the first engine of development. To discuss the specifics for what's in store in agriculture, I have with me on the program a very special guest, Mr. Devesh Chaturvedi, Secretary, Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Mr. Chaturvedi, thank you so much for joining me on the program. Let's first start with agriculture being the first engine of growth, the big impetus given to agriculture, and rightfully so.
Yeah, so as it came out in economic survey also, that agriculture has shown a very robust growth in past few years, and large workforce, around 45% of the workforce in India is still in agriculture sector, although its contribution in GDP may be around 17-18%. But considering that it is important for food security and also for nutritional security, agriculture has been given its due place, and it was first in the Honorable Finance Minister's speech also.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, it tells us a story really as far as how important the rural economy is, how important agriculture is on the whole, and the allied sectors as well. It's not just agriculture, but everything else that goes along with it, how it plays a big impact and a big role with regards to the economy.
That's true.
So let's take the discussion forward now. Let's talk about, some of the big ticket announcements as far as the budget is concerned with regards to agriculture. We have the PM Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana. Yeah. What would you like to say about it?
So this scheme has been announced, and it is inspired by the aspirational districts program, which was being run with under the directions and leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, where some 112 districts were selected across the country. But most of it was selection criteria was the Human Development Index, the social indicators. And due to with convergence and with proper administrative governance, a lot of the indicators of development have been improved in last few years. So inspired by that sort of initiative, this PM Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana has been initiated, where we will select 100 districts. Primarily, these districts will be across the country where the productivity levels are much below the standards. The credit flow has been less, and the agriculture, we can say the cropping intensity has been quite low. The land has not been fully utilized.
Areas under distress, basically.
So these are the areas where we can, if we give focused attention in terms of diversification, in terms of improving the seed quality practices, so overall productivity improves. There is diversification to high value crops and even to animal husbandry and fisheries in a more focused way. And the post harvest infrastructure, if it improves with better marketing facilities there, then the overall development of the country improves, the average of the country improves, and these districts will have a better, you can say, environment for farmers' prosperity.
Absolutely. So this is one aspect as far as the scheme is concerned.
Yeah.
Are there more aspects, or still in the making, and we'll get to know in the near future?
We are on the job now. It's like we are trying that we roll this, and we have a target that we roll this immediately after as soon as the budget is passed. And the whole data collection exercise of getting the actual data about the cropping intensity, about the credit flow to these across the district-wise data. Normally you had state-wise data, but we are doing this district-wise data and the productivity levels, which we already have. And then based on that, we'll come out with those districts which are there across the country. And then the annual action plans of the states. We will work with the states, because primarily there are two aspects of it. One is there are three aspects of it. One is convergence with the existing schemes run by Ministry of Agriculture. So our annual action plan for the next year is being prepared in this last quarter, and we are ensuring that all these schemes for those districts, which will be identified very shortly, the annual action plan will include focus attention on these districts. Secondly, convergence with other allied ministries like Animal Husbandry, Fisheries, ICAR, so that their annual action plan also incorporates the priorities of these districts. And thirdly, it is the issue of specialized projects which may require more investment, more focused attention, improving the infrastructure of our institutions there, and post-harvest infrastructure using other schemes. So that is the third aspect. So once we get these annual action plan, we'll just roll it out immediately and start monitoring it, just as aspirational district scheme was being monitored through a dashboard. And we will have similar sort of, you can say, the ranking system, so that there is healthy competition between districts and states to see that they are going ahead.
You know, that was going to be my next question. In fact, is it going to be modeled on the aspirational district scheme? It seems like, we have something to follow. Yeah. And we'll go by that model.
So we have a very successful model already there, which has worked and it is working. So we will be inspired completely by that. Of course, we'll add some more agriculture-specific initiatives, which are primarily associated with the research infrastructure, what is the best for that area based on the agroclimatic zones. But by and large, the structure will be inspired by aspirational districts program.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's move on now and talk about another aspect. We've got a major push as far as pulses are concerned as well, the pulses mission. What would you like to say about that?
So, as you know that at one point of time, our pulses production annually was 15 to 16 million tons. And the requirement even at that time was around 24, 25. So, at one point of time in 2016, when Honorable Prime Minister appealed to our farmers to increase, and there were policy changes, so the pulses production improved by 1.5 times, which was also mentioned in Honorable Finance Minister's speech earlier years. And we reached to a level of 24, 25, 26 million tons. But what is happening is because with the increase in general prosperity of the country, increasing in income levels, the demand of pulses is also rising. So still there is gap, especially in Tur or Arhar, and in Masoor and in little bit in Murad, where we need self-sufficiency. Some 3 to 4 million tons is still being imported in last few years. So the whole idea is to increase, to have this mission so that we raise to the level, our production rises to the level of our country's demand, and we are also able to become an export hub.
A side question on this, maybe not really budget related, but since we are here, the government has brought in the Bharat Dal and Bharat, other kind of pulses and other kind of grains as well. So, how do you see that going forward, and how does it impact or affect the issue of inflation as a whole?
You see, the issue is that we keep the buffer, the Department of Consumer Affairs keeps a buffer of important crops, especially the pulses, so that when the lean season comes after the harvesting, the prices don't rise. And if they rise, then either it is an open market sale to the market, or we can go through this Bharat Dal or Bharat Rice or Bharat Atta, so that the prices remain depressed and for the consumer. So on one way, we are helping the farmers through the MSP based procurement. On the other hand, we are keeping the buffer to ensure that if the prices rise after the harvesting is over, the consumers are protected through these intervention in the open market.
Absolutely. We'll talk about a few more intentions a little, interjections a little later on in the program. But let me go back to a point that you were making earlier about, production going up considerably as far as pulses are concerned. We've seen record, or phenomenal rise in food production as well, generally as a whole, and the grain production has been up considerably. What do you attribute to this factor?
So a lot of things have to be considered as the contributing factors. One of them is that progressively our irrigation area is increasing. It has crossed 54-55%, which leads to double crops in a year and maybe 3 crops in a year. So our cropping intensity is improving in many areas where irrigation facilities are reaching. Second is there is a general increase in productivity because of better varieties being released by our research institutes and being taken to the through the seed chain to the farmers, both by the government systems as well as by the private sector. So that leads to improved productivity in that area. And third is that more and more the fallow areas, the rice fallow areas, which used to be remaining without a crop after the paddy harvest, are now increasingly through the state government's interventions with partnership with central government assistance, are going into some sort of cultivation of the required crops. So all these factors together. And apart from that, there is also a push for extension services, so that there are more and more progressive farmers who are going for much better high yielding varieties as well as better technologies. All these have together contributed in our not just the food or crop production, but even horticulture production. Our horticulture production has now more than in volume term more than the crop production now.
Absolutely, and that is contributing hugely as well, because it's an important area at the end of the day. Again, another side question here, Mr. Chaturvedi, cropping patterns, how are they changing? Because we've seen that, thirsty crops in the past have been a problem area and have, drained out the land, so to speak. So how are cropping patterns changing, and which way do you see this particular aspect going?
So the whole idea of, obviously we want the cropping pattern to be such that we are able to remain self-sufficient in all food grains, including oil seeds, and also it ensures sustainable agriculture. So obviously there are areas where we would like that sugar cane or paddy, which are more and more water intensive crops. First of all is to have those practices and there are available technologies which use less water for same productivity for these crops. And if required, we can convert them into other more sustainable crops. And we are seeing that this is happening in many areas. And slowly and steadily, our mission is also to ensure that if the oilseed mission, which was announced last time, and now it is under implementation, and now this pulses mission will come. What will ensure that the productivity, if it rises, then it becomes more remunerative for the farmers to grow pulses and oil seeds. And with the system of minimum support prices which we have, the farmers will switch to these crops as against many other crops, which is what we desire.
Absolutely. All right, we'll shift focus now and talk about another area, agriculture infrastructure. As far as agriculture infrastructure is concerned, what's in the budget for agri infrastructure, and where do you see the future of agri infrastructure?
You see, agriculture infrastructure is important. You see, when you talk of investment in agriculture, so there are two types of investments. One is the investment on working capital for the farmer, which is through the Kisan credit cards, the crop loans, and other aspect is the agriculture infrastructure, the post-harvest. So as far as the long-term infrastructure is concerned, so primarily what we have seen is that as far as the horticulture is concerned, a lot of post-harvest infrastructure investments is required to not just to ensure that the wastages are less, because it is seen that the wastage of horticulture produce being perishable in nature is higher. So we need post-harvest infrastructure not just to reduce the wastages, but also to ensure that the gap between the retail price or price which is given to consumer and what the farmer gets, is that gap is reduced to the level, so that while consumer is also satisfied with the price, there is less inflation. On the other hand, farmers also get the due based on what is the cost of production. So the whole idea of having this special scheme on fruits and vegetables, the whole idea is to ensure that there is more investment in infrastructures of horticulture sector post harvest, and also ensure that we have a better facilities at the farm gate so that farmers get the best price.
Absolutely. Now, again, another linked question when we are here. When we talk about agri infrastructure, we can also talk about technology as as a whole as well. But due to the small land holdings of our Indian farmers, how much of a challenge is this?
You see, it's an obvious thing that in India there are holdings are on average holding of an agriculture household is around 1 hectare. So it's obvious that unless there is aggregation, So aggregation helps economy of scales. Aggregation also helps in getting more bargaining power to the farmers, the producer. So what we are doing is one of the ways of aggregation is through farmer producer organizations. So we already have a scheme of 10,000 FPOs, and we are reaching a level of 10,000 FPOs. So these FPOs are now, many of them are so successful that they are able to produce similar quality of produce in a much better way. And as a result, instead of they going to the market comes to them at the farm gate. And that partnership is bringing prosperity for those. So we are able to offset the challenges of small holdings through aggregation by FPOs. And second is that most of our schemes are now cluster based. So when we have clusters, again we are able to achieve economy of scales. So whether it is the oilseed mission, we are cluster based. Pulses mission, we are also proposing to be cluster based. Horticulture, cluster based. And we have the natural farming scheme, the national mission of natural farming, again cluster based. So the whole idea is to have a cluster based approach so that we achieve economy of scales and this disadvantage of small and marginal farmers gets offset.
Absolutely. So the basic concept being united we stand, and as a group together we ensure that everyone moves forward. You mentioned Kisan credit cards. Kisan credit cards also, the limit has been raised to 5 lakhs from 3 lakh rupees. Do you see that having a significant impact on the ground?
So the whole idea of this scheme is that it started in 1998. And then in this interest subvention scheme started in 2006-07. And we are having banks generally give a rate of 8.5%, out of which 4.5% is some sort of subvention in two ways. 1.5 is a state subvention, and then second is 3% is for sort of prompt repayment incentive. So if the borrower pays it in time, then they get additional 3%, so that the actual interest is 4%. Now this facility was available up to a crop loan of 3 lakhs. So banks can give loan above 3 lakhs, and what will be the level of finance or the loan depends on the land area, what is the crop being grown, and thirdly, what is the agroclimatic zone, the cost of scale of finance for that crop, and that varies from crop to crop. So what was being viewed is that many crops have a scale of finance which is high, especially for horticulture crops, bananas, potatoes, they have a higher scale of finance. Then government also introduced a few years back that KCC will be applicable to animal husbandry and fisheries also. Now the scale of finance of animal husbandry and fisheries was also very high. So these farmers, they could not get they could get the KCC or the low crop loan of higher value, but this 4.5% interest and rebate could not be obtained because the limit was 3 lakhs. So now with the finance minister proposing, honorable prime minister proposing this, and once it is passed, this rebate will go up to 5 lakhs. So not only it will increase agriculture credit in agriculture and allied sectors, it also will help diversification, because more and more farmers will be able to get cheap credit for horticulture, for animal husbandry, for fisheries, etc. So that will be a big boon for them.
Absolutely.
For the sector.
And you know, again, an obvious question is the level, is there a level or an element of protection for the credit that the farmer is taking as well?
You see, it's like this. If there is a crop insurance scheme, we have the Pradhan-Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So it's an optional thing. So if the farmer wants, by default it will be there, but if the farmer wants to opt out, it will be out. So and the whole level of finance is above the crop loan amount. So if there is any problem, if there is any sort of vagaries of weather or due to some problem, disasters, natural or man-made, that crop there is loss, the compensation is given to the farmer to ensure that not only the loan is becomes secure, but they also get the likely benefit which otherwise they would have got if the crop had been okay. That is first thing. Second is that there is always a situation of restructuring of loan if there is any natural disaster which is coming out.
Absolutely. Since we're talking about Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, Mr. Chaturvedi, there is also an element of surprise that the allocation has come down in this year's budget as far as PM Fasal Bima Yojana is concerned. Anything you'd like to say?
You see, it's very clear that this is as per the requirement. So what we have done in last few years, some reforms have taken place. So one of the reform is infusion of technology. So what is happening in more and more states are now using earlier the losses of the crops were based on the crop cutting experiments, and because there was a human element involved, there used to be insurance company used to quote higher premium thinking that there could be some sort of bias in that. But with the coming of satellite based technologies, now the insurance companies are sure that now there will be neither it will be against the farmers, nor there will be some sort of subjectivity in the system. So what is actually the loss?
Foolproof.
Foolproof. As a result, the premium levels have gone down in last 2-3 years. So because of the premium levels going down, not just the state government, but we require less money for the premium. So as a result, the amount has been kept as per our projected requirement. But if at all there is a need, government has always promised that it will give full 100% whatever is required. So
Absolutely.
That's not an issue.
So that's settled then.
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a few other initiatives, as far as the budget is concerned. The launch of the National Mission on High Yielding Seeds, Mission for Cotton Productivity, and of course, Makhana Board as well.
Makhana Board.
So
I will tell you, the makhana is something which is growing in importance, not just in the country, but worldwide. And there is a huge export of makhana from this country. And though primarily it is being produced in Bihar, but other states are also with similar situations are also started growing it. So the whole idea is, that's why Bihar is the biggest producer of makhana. So that's why this makhana board is to be created, stationed in Bihar. And because makhana has not just the issue of low technology, because the process of producing makhana is very tedious at present. So there is a need of improving some mechanization systems in that, improving the productivity, and also having better packaging facilities post harvest, so that not just the export but within the country the market improves. So that's why recognizing this and recognizing that Bihar is the highest producer, in fact main producer of makhana, this has been announced.
Absolutely. And before we call it a wrap, before we've come to the end almost of our discussion, Mr. Chaturvedi, any aspect that you'd like to specially highlight as a concluding remark before we let you go?
No, we would just like to mention that this budget has been able to address those issues where we felt there is a challenge. So inequalities in growth rate of agriculture in some districts and high in other districts, this has been addressed through the Parliamentary Dhan-Dhaanya Krishi Yojana.
Yes.
The issue of agriculture credit for diversification has been addressed. Seed becomes the most significant factor today to improve productivity and income for the farmers. So the issue of seed has been addressed through this mission. And even in Pulse's mission, the focus will be on seed and technologies. And cotton, which is a very important crop for the country because of the fact that more than 70% of our fabric is cotton, which is the best suited for our climatic conditions. And we should be sufficiently producing cotton, so we don't have to import, and we could be export for. So it has considered the whole value chain of productivity, technology, and also the industry also. So that way it has been able to address those concerns with the challenges which are existing, and once properly implemented, which is the role of us, it will be able to provide the necessary impetus to the sector wherever the challenges existed.
All right, Mr. Chaturvedi, we'll have to call it a wrap on this special telecast. Thank you so much for joining us on the program and bringing those insightful insights into where we stand as far as agriculture is concerned and what the budget has for agriculture. With that, it's a wrap. This is Frank Rausan Pereira signing off.